Thank you so much. Unlike Richard, I just met Judge Garland. I didn't know him. I didn't have a role in confirming him when he first went through the process on the D.C. Circuit Court. I have had a chance to sit down and visit with him. But I'm here today not to persuade anyone that he's the right person for the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm here to say everyone deserves their day in court. Everyone deserves their opportunity to make their case. And so while we hear groups already deciding about this candidate without even a hearing, I think that's the worst of what happens in Washington, D.C. Without even an opportunity for a hearing, people have made up their mind. That is absolutely the wrong path forward if we are going to be a country that respects the rule of law. And so it is critically important that we spend time every day talking about how important that ninth seat is on the Supreme Court, but more importantly, when you have someone with an incredibly, an incredible distinguished record, both as a prosecutor who cared about victims, who cared about doing the right thing as a prosecutor, didn't cut corners, absolutely meticulously prosecuted one of the most difficult cases ever to come to the courts in America. When you have someone who has served so admirably and so well on the second most powerful court in the country, I just ask one simple question: does he deserve his day in court? Does he deserve an opportunity to talk about what kind of jurist he's going to be when he comes to the United States Supreme Court? And the answer clearly is yes. And when we become a country that cuts corners on process, that decides what we're going to do with candidates without ever having an opportunity to take this to committee, to take this to the court of public opinion on facts and not speculation, to not hear from the candidate, we get diminished. This process becomes diminished. And so it is absolutely critical that we do our job in the United States Senate. And it's not about political line drawing, it's about common sense. It is about who we are as an institution. It's an about 11% approval rating for the United States Congress in an environment where people think we don't get our job done. Well, this is a classic example of not wanting to do our job. And I would maintain to you the reason why so many people don't want him to have a hearing is they don't want the American public to hear from him. He's an incredibly accomplished and thoughtful person. Not only does he bring an incredible record on the bench in the D.C. Circuit, an incredible record serving this country as an assistant U.S. attorney, doing some of the most difficult prosecutorial work that was done in America in the last century, but he also tutors small children. He also has a passion for making things better, not just on a big scale, but on a micro scale. And I would maintain to you the reason why we are not seeing him in a hearing is because they're afraid he'll be too good. They're afraid that his case will be so persuasive. As he was persuasive to that jury in Oklahoma City, his case will be so persuasive, we'll have no other choice than to make him the ninth member of the Supreme Court. And so it is time we do our job. It is time we respect people who step up, who offer themselves for service by at least letting them have their access to process. And it is time we respect the institution of the United States Senate by stopping playing politics with important decisions and make sure that our country is the country that's been designed by the Constitution. And so proud to stand here with my great friend. I like to call him General Blumenthal. We think that was a pretty important job, but Senator Blumenthal, who served Connecticut so ably and who understands these issues at a very detailed level. And so thank you for stepping forward. Thanks to the prosecutors who are here who talk about the quality of person. But just remember this, there's a reason why they don't want a hearing. There's a reason why they don't want a hearing, because this is a man who I think has the capability of persuading the American public that he deserves that seat on the Supreme Court. For me, part of the due diligence is to watch that hearing. part of making sure that we've covered all the bases. This is an incredibly important decision. No one should underestimate that, is actually seeing that dialogue that happens between the committee and the candidate. Now, I can tell you, having met him, and I think I said this after that meeting, how incredibly impressed I was, what a lovely meeting we had, and that my opportunity to meet him one-on-one was just to get the measure of who he was as a human being. And I can tell you that you know, his record of service, whether it was in Oklahoma, whether it was with the Unabomber case, but then on the D.C. Circuit Court as a collaborator, as somebody who tried to bring the court together to move towards unanimous decision making. And then his work with children in the district, recognizing that not everything happens at above, that in small ways we can make a difference. He's an incredible human being. I want him to have the opportunity to further persuade the United States Senate that he should be the 9th member of the Supreme Court. Until you have a hearing, and until I see him in a hearing answering questions, I don't think I can finally make up my mind. And that's why this hearing is so important. I mean, it's not a formality. It is a job interview that the entire country will have an opportunity to see, the entire country will have an opportunity to weigh in, and then make their decision. But if you don't have that interview, you will never have an opportunity to fill this vacancy. And this idea that well, it's all good. When next time, is it 2 years out? 2 years, then we let the people decide, and I don't know what that means anyway. You know, so I think that one of the things that we do way too often in the Congress, and it's symptomatic here, is we kick the can down the road. We wait for the next Congress to make a tough decision. We wait for the next Congress so that we don't ruffle any political feathers here. And it has led to, I think, a huge problem for the United States Congress in terms of our opportunity to actually get public support for what we do here. And so what I would say is, until he's had the formal job interview, I'm not ready to make a decision. But I want that formal job interview so we do our job in the United States Congress and either say yes or no to this nominee and then move to another nominee if the answer is no.